As the war with Iran enters its fourth week, President Trump says he's holding off on his threat to destroy its power plants if it does not reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the president now says talks are underway and he's extending his deadline by 5 days. For more on these developments, I want to bring in Aaron MacLean, CBS News national security analyst and host of the School of War podcast. Aaron, great to be with you. You pointed out in a post earlier today that the president is only talking about holding off on striking Iran's power plants and energy infrastructure, but not any other military action. What does this signal to you about the war?
Well, the war continues, as you just pointed out. What the president backed off of this morning, it seems, is a threat he made 2 days ago to go after some electricity, some power infrastructure used for domestic purposes in Iran. The demand that he made was that Iran needed to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or otherwise suffer this consequence of losing its power plants. This morning, just before markets opened, he stepped back from that. We can presume that he had the markets and their performance on his mind when he did that. Had he taken that step of hitting the power plants and had the Iranians then retaliated as they were threatening to do by going after more energy resources, going after desalination plants across the Middle East, you can expect that the markets would have reacted poorly to that. However, the president is left with the problem that the Strait of Hormuz is still closed. He's given himself a new 5-day deadline, or the Iranians rather, a 5-day deadline to deal with that, and he keeps talking about diplomatic outreach.
So what do we know about Iran's military capabilities? I mean, did the U.S. underestimate Iran's response?
In terms of what the Iranians are capable of doing, I don't believe our military underestimated the response. At the political level, what we predicted they may or might not have the intention to do is a different question. But the response that they have engaged in over the course of the last several weeks was widely known across our military that they were capable of this, that they had deep reserves of short-range ballistic missiles, for example, the missiles that you see striking targets across the Persian Gulf, not to say medium-range missiles that reach out to Israel. One of the more interesting developments over the last few days was on Friday, you saw two intermediate range ballistic missiles shot at an American base in the middle of the Indian Ocean, thousands of miles from Iran, called Diego Garcia. That was a new and interesting and potentially concerning development in terms of Iran's capabilities, as it had long claimed not to have missiles that reached that far. Missiles that reach that far, it's not clear what their defensive purpose would be. They obviously have a significant offensive purpose, and it appears that Iran has at least some of them lying around.
Because if they can, in theory, hit Diego Garcia, doesn't that mean that they could, in theory, hit Europe? And shouldn't the EU be a little bit more concerned about this? Are they concerned about it?
I think they are concerned. What they're going to do is a different question. How much European participation we're going to see in the Strait of Hormuz appears to be an open question in terms of what the practical level of participation will be. But no, it's not theoretical. I mean, if a missile can leave Iran and hit Diego Garcia, that missile can leave Iran and hit Central Europe 100%.
We also understand helium moves through the Strait of Hormuz, and the war could cause a shortage that could also impact semiconductor manufacturers. We've seen this snowball effect before. What can you tell us about helium?
That's right. So a lot of the conversation about the Strait of Hormuz, and if I keep coming back to the Strait of Hormuz, because it really is the center of this whole strategic puzzle that the United States and the world face right now. Yes, a lot of oil goes through that strait, but a lot of other stuff does too. For example, fertilizer. For example, helium. Taiwan, where most of the world's advanced semiconductors are produced, gets the bulk of its helium from these Gulf states, much of it coming through the strait itself. So a shutdown in the strait causes a shutdown in helium. The shortage of helium in Taiwan means you can't cool some of the processes that you need to keep cool as you're creating these high-end semiconductors. Fewer semiconductors means the price of all kinds of electronics that we're accustomed to, not to mention all kinds of stuff that's more behind the scenes, stuff used in high-end artificial intelligence applications, for example. Those numbers will start to run low in terms of production as days stretch into weeks, potentially even into months. So it's not just energy, it's a wide range of important commodities. The Middle East and this part of the world matter, no matter how much a lot of people in the American foreign policy establishment wish that it would matter less.
Aaron MacLean, a pleasure to be with you. Thanks so much for coming on our show.